All right. Okay, so I can get caught up looking in the chat. I'm highly distracted. So we have Edmond on, and we have Barnstall, Oklahoma City Public Schools, Muskogee, Ripley, Claremore. Good morning to all of you. Inola, there's more from Claremore, Wellston, Shoto. Good morning to you all. Stilla, Halcor, Oilton, Benita. Good morning, Honesty. Okay, all right. So I always start with an overview of MTSS. So a lot of you will know this. You could probably say it with me, but let's. Sorry about that. That is very distracting. Okay, so multi-tier MTSS. What is MTSS? It's a proactive and preventative framework that integrates data and instruction to maximize student achievement and support students' needs from a strength-based perspective. I have some more people in the living room. One second. My sidekick isn't on with me today that helps me with all of this, so we'll do our best here. All right. There are 5 domains of MTSS: screening, progress monitoring, database decision making, multi-level prevention system, and infrastructure. And so today we'll be talking about infrastructure. And so this is the OKMTSS framework. You guys are probably used to seeing this. And today we'll be focusing on that middle tier under sustainable teaming. I have that highlighted here for you. Multi-tiered system that supports MTSS is an umbrella for responsive intervention and positive behavior interventions and support. So one of my previous districts, we did RTI at first, and then we added in our PBIS system, and so those two make up a multi-tiered system of support. And then common misconceptions. I love to go over this real quick so that everyone understands what MTSS is and is not. MTSS is not a special education initiative. It is not for just some students. It's not only for elementary school, and it's not a program that you can purchase. MTSS is not, let's see, MTSS is a general ed initiative. It's for all students, including middle school and high school, and it's actually a system that you put in place, not a program that you purchase. So looking ahead to 2032, 2033, I'm sure you've heard that MTSS will replace the discrepancy model in Oklahoma schools, and so systems should be in place for MTSS by 2032, so that you can make decisions using this process. But MTSS will not be used to delay eligibility processes. Our team is actually working on and so the eligibility process handbook that will lay out all the processes for that. So we're in the process of doing that, and so that it's something that your team can use moving forward, that will lay out all of that for you. So our objective today is about sustainable teaming structures. We will build our capacity to lead OKMTSS implementation by identifying sustainable teaming structures. So here's our agenda for today. We will talk about what sustainable teaming is, leadership support, allocation of resources, multidisciplinary teams, and what those are made of, team structures and making time, one of our biggest barriers, and then having multi-directional communication, effective meeting components, and MTSS coaching support. So what is sustainable teaming? Sustainable teaming is a group of people working collaboratively to meet the needs of all students by building capacity and sustainability practices. It's critical for alignment, knowledge, and implementation of MTSS across the district. So why do we have teams in an MTSS system? So the MTSS team defines the processes, the tools, and the actions of the MTSS framework for districts and sites. MTSS teams make database decisions to support outcomes for districts, sites, and individual students. And the framework serves all students, not only our special ed students. As we go through our slides for today, each section that we talk about will build on the one before it. Also, one thing I forgot to mention, on our slides today at the bottom, you'll see a little check mark at the bottom that says success measure. And so this presentation was built off of the information from our implementation guide that's on our website under sustainable teaming. In that guide, there are rubric sections. And so you can use those pieces of the rubric to assess your own team and where you are with these. And so I decided to go ahead and put the success measure for the highest score at the bottom of some of these slides, so that if you were going to assess your staff on sustainable teaming, the success measure would be the highest level. So for instance, on this one, the success measure would be all staff understand that MTSS is a framework to prevent poor learning outcomes for all students, including those with disabilities and English learners. And we could add in and gifted students. It's for everyone, okay? And so that would be how you would measure it. Do all of your staff understand this about the MTSS framework? So why is teaming important? Why is this one of the core components on our framework? It's because it provides a foundational structure necessary to support the alignment, knowledge, and implementation of sustainable practices. Successful implementation of MTSS is a complex process. It requires more than just individual effort. One person can't implement MTSS alone. It takes a team, and it necessitates systems level changes. And that's achieved through collective planning, data analysis, and problem solving. This is not something a one-man show, not something just one person can do. Teaming is actually the primary vehicle for developing and sustaining MTSS system capacity. It ensures that robust practices are institutionalized into the district culture. It allows MTSS framework to remain effective even in the face of potential staff turnover, and focuses on systematic changes rather than individual projects. Teams support the scaling up of educational initiatives across multiple sites. Teams are responsible for defining the processes, tools, and actions, like aligning resources. They ensure that funds, programs, and staffing are adequately allocated to support the needs. They prevent redundancy. So a clear teaming structure helps avoid overwhelming your staff with overlapping meetings and ensures that every meeting has a distinct focus. It establishes a shared vision. So your MTSS leadership team would build a results-oriented vision that provides direction for all staff and fosters ownership among all your stakeholders. Multidisciplinary teams should be have varied expertise needed to inform database decision making. The teams conduct needs assessments. They identify priorities across the district and establish clear decision rules for student interventions, moving in and out of tiers. This collective analysis ensures that student support is fair and that decisions are not influenced by individual bias. So putting all of those different kind of systems in place. Teaming creates multi-directional communication pathways, making sure that through structured feedback loops, leaders respond to the needs of their staff. Ongoing communication builds trust and buy-in by ensuring that staff um, and families and students feel that their voices are heard and influence this decision-making process. We don't know what just happened about that. One moment, please. My okay, I'm not sure what I did there. Okay, and then the ultimate goal of teaming is to provide fair and comprehensive support, um, so that every student has access to interventions that they need, and student progress is monitored effectively and adjusted to ensure high levels of learning for all students. That's a lot. That's a lot of why teaming is important. So let's look at district leadership teams, 7 core objectives, and think about when we're going over these, which of these are strongest in your school? Where are your strengths in this and maybe weaknesses? So your district leadership team does the strategic planning and vision. They set the goal and establish a shared vision for MTSS implementation. So, do you have a district leadership team? And are they setting goals and establishing a shared vision for MTSS? Coordinated implementation. So they organize resources and oversee the processes across sites and levels. So they, and we'll talk about this later, but do a resource audit. What do you have available to you already? A lot of people think that when you implement MTSS, you have to go buy a lot of things. And honestly, you actually want to use the resources you have available and kind of weed out the ones that aren't being used. And then data-driven decision making. So the leadership team conducts needs assessments. They identify priorities and select valid assessments. So, for instance, if you're one of our OCLSD grantees, you have done a needs assessment. You've taken surveys, so you know across the district where you need to focus your attention, what you have already going, and focus. That way you can focus on the positive and build upon what you already have in place. And then professional development. So the leadership team is responsible for increasing staff capacity and fostering a climate of continuous learning. And so we look to see where we have a gap, and that's how we base our professional development plan for the year. This could include doing walkthroughs, a resource audit, all those kind of things, gathering information to see where you can support teachers with implementation. And then creating sustainability and consistency. So the district leadership team maintains fidelity to MTSS practices with a long-term vision. And so it's not just a day-by-day thing. There's a plan laid out. Maybe you have a 3 to 5 year plan, and then the leadership team is responsible for checking in to see how is implementation going. Where do we need to scale up? What are we doing well? And just making sure that the vision stays. And then stakeholder engagement. So the leadership team is also involved in gathering feedback to refine the MTSS processes, and then including families and students, and then also fair and comprehensive support. So ensuring that every student has equal access to the support that they need, no matter where they are, from maybe our lowest performing students to our very highest. All right, so leadership support and administrator involvement. This is underneath the framework. The first part is leadership support. I can't express how important this is. And those of you that are on today, you know, and you are making this a priority. Obviously, you're on this call, and it takes that kind of intentionality and support to make MTSS sustainable. School leaders are ultimately responsible for enforcing quality of school practices, even when there are policy issues that lie beyond the control of site-based administrators. That's from Clark 2019. Leaders must understand MTSS deeply enough to guide and evaluate implementation. And so that's the whole purpose of these calls, is to build capacity for leaders so that you understand what needs to happen so that you can lead the rest of the team. And then being engaged. You know, leaders can't isolate themselves from team actions. They must engage in the work directly. So by being knowledgeable about MTSS, providing resources, time, making sure that there's time for implementation, and building, putting together your team and supporting them where needed. And then being empowered to act. Administrators can command change. And so you're the ones that can allocate funds to provide professional development or curriculum resources and maintain oversight of the overall progress. So in our implementation, or in our implementation guide, the success measure for leadership support would be that decisions and actions by school and district leaders proactively support MTSS. Implementation is a high priority. So you might ask yourself, is MTSS implementation a priority right now? Is that something that needs to be focused on? I would say if you're on the call today, you're probably making MTSS implementation a priority. There's a lot going on in April in our schools, isn't there? So, all right, so let's break this apart and let's talk about allocation of resources. So first, you want to identify needs and supports. For instance, list all student needs and all existing student supports currently in place. For instance, you could go through and do, like I mentioned earlier, a curriculum audit. What curriculum do you have in place? How many different pieces of intervention, maybe online tools, do you have? I know that they can stack up, and maybe one teacher's using this and another using it. So how can you audit those and see which ones are actually needed and which ones that you could get rid of? And then not only that, but your personnel, like who do you have available and what can they do? How can they support student needs as far as maybe supplying interventions or things like that? So you want to identify needs and supports, and then overlay and match. Match each student need to the support that directly aligns. So actually looking at your students and saying, okay, what are our needs? How many students do we have with disability? How many students do we have with EL? Do we have anybody to provide EL supports? What about your gifted students? What supports are in place for that, and where do you need to? You're looking at your core curriculum. How is it on? Is it evidence based? Who receives that instruction? And so making sure, then also making sure that you look at what do you have for interventions. Is it aligned? Can you align the dosage? Are educators trained to provide the interventions? And so just really looking at what you have available now and where you need to fill in the gap. And speaking of that, number 3 is identifying the gaps. So after you match, determine gaps between what students need and what is currently available. And so this is all part of what the leadership team does. And then you select and evaluate new support. So evaluate new resources by strength of evidence. So we want to make sure everything that we're using is evidence-based. Cost, of course, we have to make it where it's feasible for schools, and making sure that this is my number 1 thing, making sure that your staff is trained to implement it. So on the rubric for this, the success measure would be resources, including funds, programs, staffing, are adequately allocated to support MTSS implementation. All right. So moving on to our multidisciplinary teams. Effective MTSS relies on the expertise of a variety of your staff members. Just having a couple of people does not lend itself, to the different lenses that can support a team. So when you're thinking about how to put together your teams, if you're still in that process of like, hey, who needs to be on our team, you want to make sure that you have a wide lens. Administrators, of course, because they can command change, they can allocate resources, monitor progress, and so that's like a non-negotiable. You have to have an administrator um, presence on your team. Um, General education experts. So pull in those teachers that have a lot of knowledge about general curriculum instructional practices. Um, Pull in those because they can give you that classroom lens that you'll need when you're making decisions. Resource experts, so community district and site resources, knowledgeable about those things. An exceptional student expert. So, for instance, we had a speech pathologist that was always on the team, a special ed director. They have a wide view of what's going on in that. And so maybe someone that is really great looking at data and can do spreadsheets and make data-based decision making easier for the team. And then consider other critical roles defined within the specific site or context. But the goal there is to be provide a variety of lenses. Teams should be defined, consistent, and part of the process development. Okay, so team structures, we have 3 different team structures that we talk about because one team isn't really enough. One team can't do it all. And so we start with your district level team. And so hopefully if you're doing MTSS implementation right now, if you're involved in that, you have put together an MTSS district level team. So they are in charge of doing all of the things that we just talked about, planning, aligning resources, policies, and supports, setting the goal and vision for MTSS implementation, having a variety of lenses. Usually it's made up of superintendents, assistant superintendents, curriculum coordinators, if you are a bigger school and you have that. Maybe someone from your special ed, EL, principals, you want your site-based principals, a general ed teacher, school psychologist. If you have one full-time school psychologist and a counselor, that would be awesome. I know a lot of the districts in Oklahoma, we don't have full-time, we contract out, but if you do, that would be amazing. So let's move on to the next team. The next team would be a site level team. And so a site level team is made up of the site principal, the reading interventionist, and general ed teacher again, your special ed teacher for that level, maybe your school psychologist again, if you have an EL teacher or school counselor, because they can provide a lens for extra needed supports. So the site level team would adapt district initiative to that specific school. There are differences in elementary, middle, and high school and how you run the MTSS process there. So having site level teams is very important. And then the last one is grade level data teams, or even a separate intervention team if needed. They develop group or student specific interventions using data driven approaches. So this is where they look at the progress monitor data, the screener data, progress monitor data, and make decisions at the student level. So do you see, you're the district leadership team, they're making like systems level decisions, creating the vision, making sure we have the resources and the time and the professional development, the training, those kind of things, making sure things are put in the calendar for the rest of the year. And then you have your site level team. So the principal is meeting with their reading specialists and interventionists, those to make sure that everything at that site level is running smoothly, getting information. And then we have those grade level data teams where they're looking at student data and making decisions on whether students are in which tier they're in, what interventions they're receiving, and are they should they be referred for a special ed, all of those things. So the success measure for MTSS, for this one is MTSS teams are representative of all key stakeholders. Clear processes guide decision making, and teams meet regularly. And so we'll talk more about that in a minute. So these are your 3 team structures that you want to have in your school. So time. And so I know that time is one of the biggest barriers to most anything we do at school. If you ask teachers, what's one of your biggest barriers, it's almost always time. And I know that you guys can relate. But so what do you do when you want to make sure something is implemented well? You set aside time, and you make time for it, and you protect that time, right? Whatever you focus on and make a priority is what will happen. And so at the district level, you want to meet monthly to go over the district level systems and making sure, again, we have funding, we have PD plans, we've done needs assessments, and we're looking at the overall implementation across the district, setting that vision and keeping it. Usually you meet 1 to 2 hours monthly. So when would you schedule it? Possibly the first Friday of the month or a designated district PD day. But the important thing is to have it pre-scheduled. So it's April right now, and I know that superintendents and principals, they're working on their calendar for next year. And so if you're in the process of that, the best thing that you can do is get that on the calendar for next year. Set aside that time already for 1 hour once a month for your district level team to get together and make sure that MTSS is being implemented the way that you designed for it to be. So you want to protect it on the master calendar. You could rotate hosting sites, so it doesn't always have to be, say, at the in the boardroom in the superintendent's office. It could be, at a different site. Also, when you're trying to figure out and find time, look at what you already have in place. What meetings are already going on? Can one of those become, maybe you have a leadership team meeting once a week or once a month. Can this piggyback off of it, or can it become this? So look at what you already have in place, but definitely want to set aside time and protect it. For your site level teams, that's basically the same thing. So you want to meet monthly and schedule maybe an hour. Scheduling these, they could be on early release days, common planning time, or before or after school, which we don't love to come before or after school, but if you have time, finding time within your day. But usually you can find even I know a working lunch sometime worked well for us for different things. So you just have to be creative and find that time, but just make sure it's protected once a month to get together to make sure your site is implementing MTSS the way you had planned, and that they have all the resources and tools they need. Look at data, overall data, and make sure that students are making growth. Some more scheduling tips are to anchor to a recurring block on the school master schedule. So this is right now would be the time to be looking at that for next year. Using early release or late start days strategically. So you might get with your superintendent and see what is planned for next year, and maybe you piggyback off of those, sticking an hour aside inside those days. And maybe embed within your existing staff meeting structure. So if you already have staff meeting plans, maybe one of those become your MTSS time for your site. And then what about student data teams or your intervention teams? And so I kind of put these together as one, but would be separate depending on how big you are, how big your district is, and how many students you have with these needs. Um, I think I have some people noting here. Okay. And so your student level data teams, so bi-weekly, every 2 weeks. So I know when to schedule it says shared prep and planning periods. And sometimes people are like, oh, on the planning period? Well, so what worked best for me as an administrator is every other week on, say, Tuesday, I met with kindergarten, second, and fourth grade. And on Thursdays, every other week, I met with first, first, third, and fifth. And it was just on the calendar. They knew every other week. During their plan, they would come in, we would look over their progress monitor data, adjust interventions, make decisions, go through any of our students, because it was planning, and we were planning their interventions for them. And that's when, they didn't want to stay after school. They would rather, do it during the day. And so one time every other week didn't seem to, actually it was the best time. When we added in other subjects, I talked about earlier doing a working lunch. So once a month we would meet, and we would look at our math data, and we would bring our lunch. And that's, when teachers understand too, they don't want to stay before or after school. So they're willing usually to, find time within their day, their working day, to talk about their students. And when you're talking about their students and giving them support and problem solving with them, they actually look forward to that time. So scheduling during common planning periods for consistency, you want to have those. And so what we would do is schedule those at the beginning of the year and just make them through Google Calendars, what we did. And we would just schedule like throughout the whole year, every other Tuesday, they knew their RTI meeting was then. And so they didn't have to guess. It was always on. If we happened to be out of school for some reason on that day, we could adjust, but that way they were planned the whole year, and just stayed the same. And it keeping standing same day time every other week builds a habit. And that also helps teachers know when to progress monitor. So if they know, like, oh, hey, on Thursday, I have my data meeting, I need to make sure I have all my students progress monitored by, the day before, so that reports can be run. Now, let me go back. If you have a lot of students, say a lot of tier 3 students, students with special needs, and you're working with one-to-one interventions, then sometimes it's needed to do your weekly review, but it doesn't have to be the whole team. It could be that student's team could get together weekly and go over progress when we're really looking at those intensive students, and we're looking like at the referral process. So just know that for sometimes you might want to do. Okay, so making time. Time is hard, but you can make time and just protect it sometime in your day. Okay, multi-directional communication. So this is imperative. This is where, hold on, I have a couple of notes I really want to talk about this. I have not been looking at my notes, but this one I really want to. Okay, so the communication loop is often the weakest point of MTSS implementation. You know how important communication is in your school, and how things can go very wrong or just stall without good communication. So administrators receive great PD and plans get made at the leadership level, but sometimes classroom teachers never hear about the decisions, for instance. Or teachers do amazing intervention work, but the data never gets back to the district team. And so both directions of communication are really important. So whatever is happening at your district level meetings, you teachers need to know. And so there needs to be systems created to push out that information. So the communication loop needs to come down from the district level teams to the site level teams, and the site level teams down to the data level teams. But also the other way, the data level team, they need to be communicating with the site level team, and then the site level team needs to communicate that data back to the district leadership team, if that makes sense. So you want this continuous loop of what is going on so that everyone knows and has a full understanding of what's going on across the district with MTSS implementation, and our students making growth, or what needs to be done. What resources are we short on, or anything like that. So effective feedback loop structures are regularly scheduled meetings, like we just talked about, monthly or weekly, with an agenda, which we'll talk about that here in a minute. Clear understanding of meeting with purpose, with assigned roles, and two-way feedback tools requiring regular updates from all members. So if you're thinking about, hey, how could I make sure that feedback loop through all the different teams is successful, what is something that comes to mind? I may have given you a little hint when I talked about agenda a minute ago. And so we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute, but having a running agenda with defined roles for the people on the team, that is your road to communication within the other teams. So common pitfalls to avoid: informal conversations. So I know this has probably happened to some of you. You'll see a teacher in the hallway and they'll ask a question, and so you'll answer it, and then that teacher goes and says, oh, well, we're doing this, and they say, well, we never heard that. So I bet you know what I'm talking about. And then there's this and then somebody is upset because, well, they didn't hear about it. Well, and then we also know the telephone game, how things can change. What was meant to be said, then later down the road, it's turned around a little bit, and so the communication isn't clear, and it can get to where it's not even communicated the way you wanted it to at all, to say that. So you want to make sure that you're not just having informal conversations in the hall about MTSS implementation. Sometimes there's too many unfocused meetings, reducing engagement. So when we're talking about agenda, that helps make sure that your meetings are focused and your participants are engaged. And so you don't have one of those meetings where you're like, well, that was a waste of my time, and we could have done that through an email. Sometimes too few meetings. So, lack of time, is an issue. But if you have too few meetings, then information doesn't arrive on time. Sometimes you need enough meetings to where it's not too late when you receive it. One-way feedback is a common pitfall. If just administrators know it and it doesn't work its way down, there's no clear structure. And then equal responsibility dilutes accountability. So everyone has to have a role and needs to know what they're accountable for. The success measure for this is MTSS subscription is shared with all staff. A communication system is in place, and teacher teams collaborate frequently. That would be the measure of success for this component. So let's talk about effective meetings and team roles. So to make your team effective, your meetings effective, you want to make sure you have that two-way communication. Well, one of the best ways is to have your agenda. So essential agenda elements are you have the date, time, and location on your agenda. the anticipated and actual attendees, so who's supposed to be there, and then maybe go ahead and list like who was there. That data can be useful later. You want to have your meeting focus, your mission, and your goals listed at the top. You want your discussion items already on the agenda and the action items. I know I'm going to share an agenda with you at the end, and it's amazing. You can adapt it to your needs, and you can even make it, you can brand it to look like your district's. But one of my favorite components is the action item area, because there's a drop down with started, completed, not started, so that you can keep track of who's responsible for the action, what the action is, and the status of the action. And then making notes and comments, making sure that someone on the team, you want to have your roles in place so that you have someone taking notes, you have someone that's enforcing your norms. And so in one of the documents I'm going to share later, it actually has a norming activity you can do with your teams to set some norms for your meetings. You can list those at the top of your agenda. So you have someone enforcing those norms, making sure that if people bring up topics that are not on the agenda, they go down in the parking lot and they can like, okay, we're going to put that in the parking lot to talk about later. That way your meeting is focused, and you complete what you mean to complete. We have a certain amount of time, right? And so we want to make sure that we actually complete what we mean to. And then you want next steps, updated action items, what needs to happen, who needs to do it, and put a date. When does it need to be done? And then make sure you have your next meeting date on there. If you share this agenda with your site level team and your district level team, you are ensuring there is that constant feedback loop, okay? So your agenda is your avenue for that. So let's talk about meeting team roles here in for just a minute. Sometimes when I talk about team roles, I have people ask, do you mean like, are they a teacher or are they administrator? No, on an agenda, what you want is you want to have a facilitator, someone that keeps the conversation going. They make sure we're moving towards progress throughout the agenda. They're, keeping it moving. You want to have someone taking notes. Usually the facilitator cannot facilitate and take notes at the same time. That's like me trying to look over here as I'm presenting, looking, who's in the waiting room or looking at questions. So we have someone on for that. You want to have a data analysis, maybe someone that's bringing the data up or looking it back or tying it back to that. When you're making decisions, well, what did the data say? Let's base it on what evidence we have. And then your student expert. So those are your maybe your grade level teacher or your special ed teacher that knows this student inside and out. So make sure you have your meeting team roles. A lot of times, like even for our OCLSD team meetings, we have an MTSS systems meeting once a week, and our team, they get on the agenda and they put their name by one of those so that it's not always the same person taking notes or enforcing the norms. Nobody wants to be the note taker. It's one of the hardest jobs, but it's so imperative to have somebody that does that. But we have our favorite note taker, but I won't mention any names. But it's definitely important to have team roles on there. You can let them pick then. So the success measure for effective meetings and team roles are that schedules are aligned to support multiple intervention levels, adequate times built in for core programming and teaming. So you have to have adequate time, and you need to have an agenda, an effective running agenda, so that you can keep that feedback loop and focus your meetings and make progress during your meetings. And making sure you have those action items and hold people accountable for the next steps. That's how you keep your system moving forward. And then we have our last component under our framework for leadership support is MTSS coaching. And we have 3 layers of support. And so number 1 is professional learning. This is foundational, ongoing opportunities for staff growth. Leaders must identify what learning is needed. So We have one, for instance, a tier 1 audit that you can do. Look at your screeners and see, are 80% of your students meeting grade level expectations? If they're not, then you want to look at your tier 1, because that signals a tier 1 problem. And so you're going to look at your curriculum and do a checklist. What is your curriculum? Is it evidence-based? Is it aligned to standard? All of the things. What about best teaching practices, science of reading, all of those things. So we have checklists for all of those. You go compile all that data and you bring it back and go, wow, we don't, it's the data tells you this is where we need professional learning. Maybe we have this great curriculum, but it's still in boxes on the shelf. Or you might find teachers have it, but they were never trained to use it effectively. So maybe you're contacting the provider and scheduling professional development for the core programming. You might find there's specific best practices that teachers don't know anything about, like multiple opportunities to respond, or basing their teaching on formative assessments in the classroom. Maybe that's formative assessments aren't a part of their day. So going through, doing your walkthroughs, doing audits, and collecting information, that's going to guide your professional learning for the year. So instead of just looking ahead and going, oh, well, at the beginning of the year, we always have to do our bloodborne pathogens and all those. You have to do those things, but what does your staff really need during that time too, in those first few days? And then on your monthly cadences, or if you have PD days built into your calendar, what's going to fill those? It needs to be based on data that leaders collect, so that you're moving your teachers forward. We give students what they need based on data. We need to actually give our teachers what they need based on data as well. So assessing your current team knowledge level, identifying who needs specialized training, and evaluate capacity and find appropriate PD sources. So the success measure for this one is professional learning and coaching are institutionalized, so all teachers continuously examine, reflect, and improve practice. The second level of support is internal coaching. This is district level support. A district level expert guides implementation. Can be an existing staff member trained in MTSS, or a newly hired MTSS implementation leader. A lot of our OCLSD teams, they have someone that's kind of in charge of the MTSS implementation aspect, and so they're the ones that's guiding their learning, and then they're passing that information on to their staff. So that's a district level internal coaching, and that can look different depending on your district. So larger districts sometimes afford a dedicated position for an MTSS leader, but it doesn't have to be that. And then the third one is external coaching, and so that's available when internal capacity is insufficient. If you don't have someone in your team, this includes state grants, like the OCLSD grant, for instance. We do MTSS coaching. You can there's other third-party entities that have MTSS implementation components to them. So just finding ways to support your team, whether it's internal or external, and then making sure that professional learning is based on data collected from your leaders. So that's a lot about sustainable teaming. This is a broad overview. Literally every section of that can turn into a professional development on its own. So, but I wanted to give you like an overview of that whole pillar and break down what it means. And so some of the key takeaways from this session today is that all students benefit. The MTSS framework is for every student, not just those with disabilities or those in special education. Leadership in MTSS is non-negotiable. Effective implementation requires a leader who's engaged and knowledgeable and empowered to act. We have to have structure in our teams. Teams need to be multidisciplinary to have multiple views. They need to be defined. They need to be scheduled consistently and protected at the three different levels. Communication is huge. You have to have communication loops so that everyone is in the know about all the things. One way to get buy-in is to make sure everyone is in the know and involved. And so, that might be sending out an MTSS newsletter um, monthly, or having an MTSS section on and maybe an email that goes out about MTSS implementation on a regular basis, so people are kind of looking for it and they know to look for it. Part of your staff meeting, that's part of your agenda at your staff meetings, MTSS implementation updates. Making sure, because the fastest way to get people to not buy in is to keep them in the dark about things or have them hear things in different pieces in unstructured ways. And then sustainability requires investment. Allocate resources annually, meet with purpose, and invest in coaching and professional learning. So, and talking about allocate resources annually, that means like sometimes if you need to look at resources annually because sometimes they do not meet expectations or they aren't what your students at that time need. So that's something you don't just do at the beginning of MTSS implementation. So make that clear. So references today we used Clark 2019. Multi-tier system support in secondary schools. Check that out. Okay, I'm going to ask that you guys complete this survey today for me, if you wouldn't mind scanning that, or I think that Paige is going to stick some of those in the chat. Let's see. Do you have a two-way feedback tool? Sandy, you know what? I am actually working on a two-way feedback tool, and so I will email you. Okay. But I do have some resources after this screen. If you guys will complete this survey, I'll give you a minute to scan this or click on the link in the chat. And then on the next screen, I have several downloads for you guys. And I'll talk about those in just a second. Okay, while you're filling out that survey, we'll stick these links in the chat. These presentations, we put them on our YouTube channel. So if you ever want to grab these and look at them again or show them to your team, you can go to our YouTube channel and this presentation will be on it. The first resource is an editable communication flowchart. So you can, so that you can define what that looks like within your teams and how communication is going to flow between your teams. So there's one, I think there's an example and then one that you can fill in yourself. The second one is a school-wide team roster template. So you can look at who is available for teams and go ahead and fill that out so that you have defined who is on the teams. And then I'm going to click on this one and open it. This is a resource that I will want to share. There might be a couple of our OTLC grantees that have this. This talks about making team meetings effective. But here's a standard running agenda template. When you click on it, you'll have to make a copy. This is the one I was talking about. But in this, you can put your mission and vision, your team norms. I have a norming activity in that previous link that I just showed you. If you don't have norms, you can do that norming activity in one meeting and then have those. It's really great for buy-in if you do those together and that with that activity. You can link specific resources in here that you'll want to look at, like if you have a specific data collection tool, some kind of dashboard or something you can link in that's helpful. You have your team members, the goal of your meeting, and then this is the main meeting. And so it really runs you through, has your meeting roles, who was in attendance, your date. You can even put, middle of the year or, whatever you want to do there. You can even take that out like I did. Here's the action step section. So you can put in what needs to happen, who's responsible, the date that it's due, and then you can click on in progress or completed. Here's the parking lot, my favorite spot, because my team and I, when we are meeting, we come up with all kinds of things to talk about, but if we don't stick it down here, we might get way off track. It won't be productive. So this is a great place to put those things like, hey, we'll talk about that later. So, but anyway, you can customize this. So I hope you enjoy that. This is a great way to communicate with other teams as well. And then if you scroll down here, this is the team norm building activity that you can do. It can help. And some great tools in there. So I hope that is helpful to you. If you're on today, you've already registered for all the future calls, so you really don't have to worry about this. I always send out the day before like a reminder, just in case. If you don't want to join the next one, you just ignore it. We have now a monthly MTSS office hour, so if you start doing some of the things and you're like, you know what, I really want to know about this, or I want to jump on and ask a question, it's come and go. So you can register for that. It's on the second Thursday of each month, and there's just an hour that I just open up a Zoom and I sit here. If people get on, we talk and we can answer questions. You can come for 5 minutes and leave if you want, or you can stay on. And we did our first one last month, and we had some really great conversation about behavior and attendance interventions, like what to do about that, and looking at triangulating data with looking at behavior, attendance, and academics at the same time. So it was a great meeting. So if you can join that if you want, there is the link. Sign up. Well, I hope today gave you some things to think about with sustainable teaming, and cleared up some maybe questions you had about the different levels of teams and why they're important. So be sure, if you have any questions, just reach out to me, and I'm available. If you email me, you can marlo.lee@sde.ok.gov. There's a button at the bottom